Okay. Yeah, sure. My name is Marco van Gelderen. I'm an associate professor at the Free University of Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And I conducted this study together with Teemu Kautonen from Finland and Matthias Fink from Austria. Sure. This research is about people intending to start a business and whether they subsequently act on those intentions or not. So entrepreneurial intentions are important. Yeah. Yeah, sure. The reason I was interested is that I'm interested in entrepreneurial action. So whether the things that people do to start a business, because in the end, entrepreneurship is about what you do. It's about behavior. It's not about, in the end, it's not about plans and intentions. And so far, there have been more than 100 published articles on intentions, because schools and governments, they're interested in how to raise the level of intentions, and they like to know what determines whether people want to start their own business or not. And these are, of course, valid questions. But in the end, it's about whether people actually do something with those intentions. And so far, there's very, very little research on this topic. So this is what motivated us to do this study. And in fact, our study revealed that only 70% of people, took no or hardly any action. So only 30% of people took action following these intentions. And I'm not even talking about whether people actually started their business. This is just about taking steps to start the business. So many people apparently, for many people, an entrepreneurial intention is not sufficient to take action. And this is what we already suspected, and why we figured that it is important to study additional variables to intention, to see what determines whether people take action or not. And we focused on how people regulate their behavior, and therefore we focused on self-control as a trait. So we studied self-control as a trait variable, and we investigated whether this had an effect on whether people took action or not, and we did this in relation to 3 emotions at the action level, of which we suspected that it would hold people back from taking action. These were firstly action uncertainty or doubt, so people who do not know where to start, what to do. Action fear, so people who may in the end be afraid, for example, of investing your own savings and such. And action aversion, there are always, starting a business comprises a lot of behaviors, and there may always be aspects that you really do not like to do. Maybe tax returns or, it can be anything. So we also measured those. So we were interested in whether self-control would have an effect on taking action, and how it would relate to these emotions, action level emotions. Yeah. The way we studied this is close to the late term, so it's about how well people are able to regulate their own behavior. So in relation to these emotions, it would be, for example, you feel uncertain, you have doubt about how to do something, but you're still able to regulate yourself into taking action. So that would be an example of how self-control would interact with these emotions. So what we subsequently did was we studied a sample of the Finnish working population, and we followed them over a 1-year period. So at the first time point, we asked a large number of Finnish working people whether they had intentions to start their own business, and then those who did, we followed over a 1-year period to find out whether they would take action or not. And what we found was okay, intentions are of course still important, but only 30% took action. So intentions do predict whether people take action or not, but it's also good to look at these other variables, because we found that self-control played a very important role. It doesn't predict intentions or actions by itself. So it's not that because people are good at regulating their own behavior that they therefore like to start their own business, or that they therefore take action. But it's more that self-control moderates the relation between intentions and actions. So of those people with high intentions to start a business, those who were also high in self-control, they were significantly more often able to take action. Secondly, self-control helped prevent these action-related aversive, these action-related emotions that could prevent action from taking place. So those high in self-control had significantly less emotions of doubt, fear, and aversion. So that's a second outcome. A third outcome was that those who were high in action uncertainty or doubt and high in self-control were able to overcome this uncertainty or doubt and were still able to take action. So self-control of those three emotions was particularly helpful in relation to uncertainty. So the people who are uncertain about what to do, but are still high in self-control, they're able to take action. And finally, somewhat surprisingly, we found that aversion, action aversion, was related in a positive way to taking action. But this may have to do with the design, because here it's a question of causality, we believe. So it has probably been the case that those who took action more also felt action aversion more, because they only then felt aversion once they took these actions. So this was something we didn't expect, but that also came out of the research. Yeah. Uh-huh. I think you've just provided a wonderful alternative explanation. That could also be the case. Indeed, that those with aversion to action only take action when they're really having a strong belief in that it may work. So that could be another explanation, that there is a positive association between action aversion and taking action. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, for those who want to help entrepreneurs to start their businesses, it confirms. But this, I think, there's now more evidence, a lot more evidence pointing in this direction, that it's more about actions than about intentions. So they should go beyond, let's say, writing a business plan, courses aimed at creating intentions, because in the end it's about action. So if you can introduce actionable elements into the training program, that is helpful. Particularly in relation, I guess, to action fear, because with fear it is known that fear can reduce under the influence of exposure. So once you start doing something, it may become less scary. With regard to uncertainty, it shows the importance of also training, or for entrepreneurs themselves, getting to know exactly what you have to do, what you need to do. But even if you don't have that knowledge, particularly if you're high in self-control, it may be helpful. It can happen that you are able to take action anyway. In a wider setting, it shows the importance of so-called volitional variables. So that it's not only about volition, but also not only about motivation, but also about volition. So beyond wanting to start a business badly, it's also important to have these, to focus on self-regulation. And this is in fact where our subsequent research has focused on. So one thing we have studied after this study is something called implementation intentions. So these are pre-specified if-then, no, I should explain this, you can edit this. I should explain this differently. These are pre-specified behaviors in response to situational cues. So, for example, you want to raise money, and you know that a particular person might be interested in investing, and there may be a meeting where that person is. To have the intention to speak to that person, that's a goal intention. An implementation intention would specify the situation under which you take a pre-specified action. So it could be whenever that person stands by himself or alone, or by herself or alone, I will approach that person and introduce myself with the following line. So this is purely, this is a good intervention that is helping volition, that is helping to take action. So that is one example, I think, of a practical implication. But this is more our current research than our follow-up research than is in this paper. Well, we are psychologists, and this study is purely individual level. So in terms of a policy implication, can I check 1 second if we actually wrote something about this, because I can imagine that we didn't. No, I don't think we can derive direct policy implications. There's another thing, by the way, that is interesting about self-control, because there's quite a sizable body of research by a psychologist called Roy Baumeister, who showed that this is one of the few traits that you can actually train. So most traits are supposed to be stable, so they're fixed over time and place. But he, as a research program, directed at something called self-regulatory strength, which is a variable very close to self-control. And he has shown that if people, for example, are in a program to train self-discipline by one way or the other, so it could be a money management program, it could be some sort of boot camp, it could be something about monitoring your finances, whatever. The interesting thing about those programs is that the results generalize to other domains. So somebody who has, for example, been on a strict regime to go to the gym for 3 months, went like 5 times a week. After 3 months, that person is has not only been to the gym, that person is also better able to follow a ball on a screen among many other balls, or that person will clean up more, or that person will spend the money more wisely. So actually self-control is something that you can train. So that is also an interesting finding, I think, because normally traits are very hard to train. It's very difficult for an introvert to become an extrovert. Although with high amounts of self-control. Even an introvert can self-regulate him or herself to act in an extroverted way at times, although it wouldn't be the preference. But there's research that you can improve self-discipline. Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yes. Yeah. 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 Courage. Yeah. Okay. So what is your what is your PhD about? Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, then self-discipline or self-control could be one of the criteria. Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah. I think you should have enough to edit 1 or 2 minutes, I guess.